Hey friends, Elvis here. Today I'm finally ready to share my Druid build guide with you. Now, I'm guessing the first thing you want to see is probably gameplay.
I must wait.
Now, the first item you need to take note of is this one here. When Nature's Fury key passive triggers a free skill, your next non-ultimate cooldown of the opposite type are reduced by 12 seconds. So essentially, Nature's Fury is this passive down here. It's the most important stat in this build. Here's how it works. If I cast an Earth skill, there's a 20% chance I'm going to cast a free Storm skill. And it works the other way around with if I cast a Storm skill, a free Earth skill. Now, you also have to take note that the free skill that gets casted, so there is a 20% chance, will be in the same category. If I use Earthen Bulwark, there's a 20% chance that it will use Cyclone Armor because it's the only storm spell in the group. And same if I use Landslide, it'll only use Tornado or a Lightning Storm. With this item here, every time I cast a free spell, which is a 20% chance, my cooldowns are dropped by 12 seconds. That's how I'm able to have 0 cooldowns. Okay, so the next one that we need to look at is this one here. So Werewolf skills function as storm skills. So that way Nature's Fury, it'll still count. It'll still have a 20% chance to use the opposite element type. And it's the same with my Werebear skills. They become Earth skills. So we're going to be relying on Earth skills to be pumping out tons of free tornadoes, hurricanes, and essentially be immortal or close to immortal. This is where most of our damage is going to come from. So this legendary aspect here, Trample now summons 6 landslide pillars, and each landslide pillar does, in my particular case, 80%. Now, you might be wondering, how come I've got it on my ring and not on my weapon, which would do twice as much damage? It's because we've got a very specific weapon on this build itself. I'll show you quickly what it looks like too. This is what it looks like. Okay. All those landslides coming out from just using that ability. I'll save the weapon for last because it's where it gets a little bit complicated, and it's what makes my particular version of this build different to what I've seen. Let's just jump onto the boots. So this is very, very straightforward. Damaging from Earth skills, which is our main source of damage, slows enemies by 50%. It doesn't matter how much you slow the enemies for. The only thing that we care about is that the enemies are crowd controlled. That way, if we've got damage to crit on enemies that are crowd controlled, there's a lot of stats to scale our DPS. So all our Earth spells will now slow targets and make them vulnerable to that. Now, next up, we've got the duration of Earthen Bulwark, which is our defensive skill. This guy here, essentially this extends the time by 6 seconds and constantly keeps up a whole heap of shield. This is an extremely important ability because it makes us unstoppable. We do not have to worry about getting crowd controlled, which is a huge thing in the end game. Essentially, if you get crowd controlled, you're going to die. So that extends that period of time. So these gloves are pretty simple. Essentially, when I trample and all the landslides come from the ground, kind of like a shark, attacking from the earth, this does it twice. So it'll go through, and then you'll hear it come through again. It also adds just a little bit of a damage bonus, 11%. Chest piece here, I've imprinted it. Essentially, when I fortify, which is all the time, I get Fortify from Earthen Bulwark, which is up permanently. My Earth skills get a +2 rank. So just a nice flat rank bonus here with this chest. And then on the helmet, this is a completely optional item slot. You can run whatever you want. And you're going to see that there's actually a theme with this build. There's a lot of flexibility. Okay, let's get into the weapon. So it's going to get a little bit complex here, but I'll go slow. Here's what it is. This is an ancestral unique staff. It can only be found in World Tier 4. Now, I'll show you an alternative if you haven't found this item, because it is very, very rare to find. So what we're going to do is swap out Trample on the ring, and we're going to make sure that we've got it on our weapon. Now, the cool thing about this is we've now got a huge damage increase because it is on our weapon now. Now, we also want to run critical strikes with core skills, increase our attack speed. That way, we can use a core skill, crit, use our spirit generator, and proc that cooldown. I'm going to be using Storm Strike instead because it is very, very effective. We're also going to be replacing our Poison Creeper. We're actually going to be using Shred. Now, all we're going to be doing is attacking with Shred as soon as it crits, which is pretty much every single time you use it. You're going to use your spirit generator and your cooldowns will get reduced that way. But let's get back to the main builds. Okay, let's get into the weapon. So essentially it makes Claw a storm spell, but it also uses Storm Strike. Now, the way it functions is it does them both at the exact same time. So when you've got that 20% chance to reduce our cooldowns, that chance is now doubled because it's casting 2 storm skills in one hit. And it also will bring out Earth Spike. There's a chance it'll cast this Earth Spike ability as well. You can actually see it happening when I attack. See the rocks coming out of the ground? Right? 20% chance. So we are pretty much always having our cooldown drop. Now, when it comes to the actual cooldown reduction, this is really, really important. We are essentially using Trample and Earthen Bulwark at the same time. And we need to keep them both up permanently. Now, you'll notice the cooldown on Trample is actually 11.37 seconds. And my Earthen Bulwark is essentially 13 seconds. Now, they're not that low usually. If I take these items off, this is what the true cooldown is. 14 seconds on Trample and 16 seconds on Earthen Bulwark. So when we trigger the cooldown reduction, it's only 12 seconds. So we're left with this awkward period of 2 seconds for the Trample and 6 seconds on Earthen Bulwark. That's too much, right? We can trigger the cooldown twice though, and it will work, but it's awkward and it's a real big difference if you've got cooldown reduction. Now, the only way you can get cooldown reduction is on your helmet, your amulet, and your offhand. I believe they're the only slots. Now, the minimum amount of cooldown reduction you want is to get the items below 12 seconds because that is the cooldown roll. This is a max roll for this aspect. So we have to get it under 12 seconds. So when we're resetting, the skill is available without the awkward, second or two. So for Trample, we're fine. We're completely under 12 seconds. Now for Earthen Bulwark, we're fine too. We have the exact amount of cooldown reduction needed because essentially we're going to have 1 second left over once our cooldowns are reduced, but it takes about 1 second to attack again with your spirit generator to reset that cooldown. Now, here's where it gets doubly interesting with this build. So I'll just go over some of the bonuses that we've got. Claw's attack speed is increased by 10%. The way attack speed works, it's essentially the same as cooldown reduction for this build because the faster I can attack, the more chances I have to proc this legendary effect. So I want to be punching really, really, really fast. Claw has a 10% chance to attack twice. Now, if it attacks twice, it's going to trigger all of these cooldowns again. So it's very, very efficient. Then we've got Storm Strike, 15% chance to make enemies immobilized. You have to choose this. It doesn't add any value for us. And then we've got this one here, which essentially makes targets vulnerable, a 50% chance. So a little bit of vulnerability there. We haven't added any bonuses to anything else. Okay, so our main damage is coming from Landslide. So we've fully statted this item to the max. When I cast Landslide, there's the 20% chance to cast the alternative storm spell. So it's going to cast one of these two spells. So what I've done here is I've put extra points into the secondary stats. You're going to notice this. I'll have 1 point into lots of stats. The reason why is even though Tornado is not in my active skill slots, it still pulls the bonuses as well. So there's still a 20% chance I can cast 2 tornadoes, a huge amount of vulnerability that I can add to the target. So it's really important that you put at least 1 point into the bonuses. Earthen Bulwark. So we can level this up a little bit higher. We don't have enough skills to be frank, but we're defensive enough just to have it. I've got 1 point into it. And for the bonus, we're going for extra Fortify. This is just a little bit of defense. The alternative is this one here. So it does 3,000 damage at the end of it. When it's casted, it's really not that effective. It's all right, but the damage is negligible. Now we've got Cyclone Armor up, of course. So every time I cast Earthen Bulwark, it has a chance to shoot out a big Cyclone Armor. This is a fantastic skill because the secondary stat guarantees to make enemies vulnerable. Guarantees it. Now we're also rotating both of these. They're kind of like war cries. This one is very important because it's going to give us 15% more attack speed. It's also nice to have this as it's kind of like a little potion that you can use as well. Now we're using Debilitating Roar. If you look at my active skill slots, this is a completely free slot. You can put in anything that you want. I'm using this particular one just because there's nothing better. Like there's literally no other skill. Like until they maybe buff the ultimates. I mean, you can run wolves, right? You can chuck on another companion, whatever. This is nice though, because if you do get bad RNG and you don't trigger, because remember there's that 20% chance to get cooldown. Sometimes you can get just like insanely bad RNG, like 1 out of 1,000, and you won't proc it. You may want to cast a Debilitating Roar, which is going to give you some more defense. Now, this is a huge damage boost. So we're running Poison Creeper. Check out the second tier on this. So your critical strike chance is increased by 20 against enemies that are strangled by Poison Creeper. Now, if I go to my actual spirit boons, there's this one here. It's called Pack Leader. Critical strikes have up to a 20% chance to reset the cooldowns of your companions. We are doing so many critical strikes, it's not funny. That means we permanently have uptime on our companions, which means we permanently have 20% increase critical strike chance. That is an enormous amount of crit chance, guys. 20% is friggin' huge. Now, we're also using 1 point into Hurricane. That will trigger every time we use Trample, or 20% chance we use Trample. It's enough to keep Hurricane up most of the time. Now, we've actually spec'd into 20% less damage. The alternative is we can go 15% chance to make enemies vulnerable for 3 seconds. So a little bit of extra vulnerability here. Now, we've got points into Trample, of course. This is our main skill that triggers the landslide. We've actually gone with this one here. It grants us 20% of our base life as Fortify. Again, some more defense. Now, you're going to notice that I've only got 1 point into Trample, considering how often we use it. The reason why we haven't put a whole heap of points into it is because we can get more DPS out of our other passive abilities that we've got. Rather than stacking this one up here, the damage is too small to really worry about, in my opinion. Crushing Earth. Earth skills deal 15% increased damage to slowed, basically crowd-controlled enemies. 15% damage boost for 3 points is enormous. Now, we've got 1 point into Safeguard. This is just a bonus. Crit strikes with Earth skills fortify you. And this one here, while you have Fortify for over 50%, your Earth skills deal 12% increased damage, a massive DPS boost again. Nature's magic skills deal 4% increased damage to elites. Using natural disaster, your earth skills deal 4% increased damage to vulnerable enemies. Nature's magic skills deal 6% increased damage. Here's where it gets awesome though. Triple this bonus if an earth skill is the next skill casted after a storm skill. So we're constantly rotating our earth and storm skills. 18% increased damage. 18% for 3 points. Just a whopping amount of damage between these passives here. And then lastly, of course, Nature's Fury, which our whole entire build relies on. Take 10% reduced damage from elites. This is completely optional. It depends how you're going to play. Maximum spirit. We're not using any spirit anyway. Reduce the duration of control impairing effects. We don't get control impaired because we have Earthen Bulwark. And then we've got gain 311 thorns. Like, who cares? We're not doing a thorns build. So it's kind of like the best out of pretty bad choices for our particular build type. 10% more attack speed. Attack speed is, again, works the same as cooldown reduction for our build. The quicker we can attack, the more chances we have a chance to proc that cooldown reduction. Critical strike damage. Crit damage is very, very important on our build. I actually need to get more of it. This is going to keep our Poison Creeper cooldown to essentially 0. Every 20th kill causes your next earth skill to overpower. Now, the Paragon board, I'm not going to go over all of them. I'm going to go over just one, okay? Because all the others are completely optional to you, but this one is very, very important. So you want to get the Paragon board with this legendary node. Your earth skills deal 30% increased damage to crowd-controlled enemies. This is a straight-up 30% damage increase. Now, some of the bonus tiers are very, very good. Now, we've got this one here. As you can see, I haven't met the requirements for the bonus, 10% earth skill damage. It'll come. It'll just naturally come the more I level. I just haven't got there yet. And then all the bonuses around this is really good. Crit damage to crowd control, crit damage to crowd control, earth skills, just a huge amount of DPS from these 6 Paragon points here. And then we spec'd into this one here. So critical strike damage with earth skills. And you can see I am getting the bonus off this one. Yeah, if you're looking for something different from just running your typical kind of pulverized build that everyone's running, run this one. It's so much fun.
Yeah!